Resiliency Within, with host Elaine Miller-Karras, is brought to you by Trauma Resource Institute, Incorporated. Visit traumaresourceinstitute.com.
Welcome to Resiliency Within, featuring your host, Elaine Miller-Karras. In unprecedented times, our beliefs and well-being are put to the test. When we take the things we've learned in life and look at challenges in a whole new way, we learn to develop resiliency, which can then be used to promote healing and personal strength. Now, here is Elaine Miller-Karras.
Welcome to Resiliency Within. I am so encouraged and excited that I have with me today Mary Keating, and I'm going to introduce her and say a little bit about her. Welcome, Mary.
Oh, thanks for having me here today, Elaine. I'm very happy to be here and with everybody out there.
Well, and it was so fun as we were getting started. She has a lovely necklace on for those of you that just can hear us through our Voice America podcast. That I actually have the very same necklace that I got in New Mexico years ago, and she also has a lovely image of the Buddha, which I have also in my backyard. So it's like, oh, we just met, but I think we may have some things in common when we start talking together. But
That's so cool.
let me say a little bit about her. You know, we've entitled this show today, Stereotypes About Disabled People, Victims or Heroes. But I want to say a little bit about Mary. She is the author of the memoir-in-verse, Recalibrating Gravity, and she is a lawyer, disability advocate, and three-time Pushcart Prize nominated poet. After a car accident at the age of 15, it changed the trajectory of her life. She went on to Yale Law School, worked as an attorney at IBM, founded her own law practice twice, and was appointed by Governor Jody Rell and Donnell Malloy to serve on and later chair the Connecticut State Rehabilitation Council. Mary lives and works in Connecticut, where her firm, Mary Keating Esquire, LLC, guides clients through estate planning, trusts, and planning for long-term care and disability. So, Mary, I know there's so much more to say about you, but I would just like to ask the first question is, what's on your mind today as we're getting started?
Well, what's on my mind today, because I'm also a disability advocate, I've done that my whole life, is I'm very concerned about how the Justice Department has decided not to help enforce integration mandate of the ADA and a case that was decided. And so it's put the disability community in a bit of a panic because they're not getting the support of the government that they need, which is so essential. And disabled people, when they're supported in their communities, live much fuller lives. Everybody lives a better life. And I hope that they change their mind and not
Well, and I think
take
it's
these
really, isn't it?
bans.
It's going backwards because I remember when the ADA Act was passed. I mean, I could see the changes in my community. They changed the sidewalks so that they were easily accessible for people in wheelchairs, for example, and all the
Yeah.
different kinds of accommodations that have become so important for people to lead fuller lives. So I'm wondering maybe if we might talk a little bit about um, when you were in that car accident when you were 15, it left you a paraplegic. And I mean, this might help us too to understand the degree of your advocacy. And would you like to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I was a 15-year-old kid. I was the middle child of five. I grew up in a big family, very active, wanted to be a dancer, had a boyfriend, very popular in my school. And I got into a car at a party with a guy, and he was not in the right state of mind. And he drove us into a tree at maximum speed. He died, and instantly my life changed. I couldn't walk anymore. I couldn't sit up by myself. I couldn't do anything. And I had to go into rehab hospital and learn to just get back to life. And at the rehab hospital, they were fantastic. They said, "You are going to be able to be independent." And thank God for them and for my parents, because the thought of I was just lying there. I couldn't sit up, and I'm thinking, uh-huh, well, maybe, but I'll
Yeah.
go with it. And so I worked really hard and I did become independent, but I can do as much as I can. But if society is not set up, they're not ramps, they're not parking, there's not the equipment needed, automatic door openers, things that people need, or the systems for getting a wheelchair fixed quickly, then I become more disabled by the inaccessibility of society than my own disability. And so I began to realize that. So I wrote an article. I know that when you talk to people and lecture to them, they don't listen to you, they tune you out. But if you tell a story, they
Yes.
listen. So I told a story about trying to get my brother a gift and all the obstacles I encountered. Like I couldn't find parking. I drove a van from my wheelchair. It was really, it was back then, it was a really novel idea. You
Yes.
think these people made it in their garage and it was a huge Chevy van. It was this little tiny kid and I'm in this enormous van. I'm driving around in my wheelchair and it had a lift and it had all these buttons you'd push. It was very high tech at the time.
Wow, that would have been
And
kind of really more novel at the time, right? That you even had accessibility to that?
yeah, it was pretty. My dad
Wow.
found the place and we went to their shop and they actually had me drive it. And I didn't know how to drive. I didn't have my license. And they just said, oh, just go slowly. And I'm driving this big van and I'm sure I'm going really slow. But it was such a sense of freedom. Like I could just get into this vehicle and go anywhere. I didn't need my mother. I didn't need anything. And the other thing I laughed about is when you're paralyzed, you can't hold your shoes on if you're wearing floppy shoes, right? You can't grip your feet. And so I used to say, and my shoes don't fall off because I'd have to, when you transfer into a car, when your transfers, like when you go from one space to another, you have to slide on a board and your shoes fall off or you hop into the car. Anyway, it was kind of a joke. But anyway, I got this van and I told the story about I couldn't find a parking space because I need extra space for the ramp, the lift that came out. And then when I finally found a place, then I couldn't get up a curb and I couldn't get in, then I couldn't get into the store. And when I finally found some place and just the whole story really putting people into my perspective. And
You were
I
just, and this is a story of when you were a teenager, when you had
yeah,
come out of the
yeah.
rehab hospital and you were trying, I'm going to be independent and I'm going to do this. I mean, I can just see, I can almost feel, I can feel your spirit, Mary. I mean, I can just see that you're kind of like that ever ready bunny. I'm going to do this. And yet here are these obstacles in your way.
Right. And so I will go back and say how I
Yeah.
got to that
Yes.
mindset.
Okay.
But so I wrote this story. I was 20 actually when I wrote this story. And so the Handicap Society the next week wrote a rebuttal to my story. And they said, we don't need these curb cuts and we don't need parking. And I'm like, what? I was so angry. And my father, who's always this cool guy, he's always like reading the paper. He always looks over from reading the paper. Oh, contact the Human Rights Commission. So I did. And so and I found the only blind person in town, and we went to see them. And then we got the mayor to come downtown in a wheelchair, and he put in curb cuts and parking when he realized he couldn't get into his own office. He couldn't do anything.
Oh
So
my.
this is years before the ADA.
And
So
so
one
you were
little
doing this
voice,
before we even had the ADA.
right?
That 20-year-old spirit was going, I'm writing something about this. And your dad, that was so amazing that he actually kind of knew what to do.
He really taught me a lot about politics too. So one little voice, right? I'm a little voice in this big world. I see something wrong. I write about it. I follow it through. I get people on my side and the world changes. So imagine if all of us did that, how
Yeah.
amazing it would be,
Well,
right?
so was that empowering for you at that time? I mean, did
Ah,
you feel like, wow, I did something?
yeah, it was totally empowering. I said, whoa. Think about that. Like you write something. So in the end, years later when I wrote my book, I thought, what happens if I write a book and hopefully everyone reads it and it changes people's views and minds, you know, how empowering. Because words are amazing. They can be used for such wonderful things.
Well, and so after the accident, then you were in rehab, and you said that the rehab hospital was really good, which sometimes I always think there's some angels in the world that work in rehab hospitals. I was a medical social worker, and part of my training when I was in school was working in a rehab hospital, and I was always so amazed at the different things that that they could do to help people become more independent. So you feel that was fortunate for you to have found that particular rehab setting for you?
Yeah, but I think the core of everything was my parents. So my mom at the time, about 3 years before my accident, she got into AA. She had been having a drinking problem. She wasn't
Uh-huh.
like a raging alcoholic, but she had a problem, and she went into the program. And so she instilled the AA steps, one day at a time, easy does it. And I actually, if I could share this poem,
Oh, I would
it's
love for you to
a
share the
short
poem.
poem from my book. It's my book.
Well, and
Um,
let's say the name of your book again, because we would want
It's
people to go out and buy it.
Recalibrating Gravity. It's actually my story. It's told in poetry, but don't get afraid of that. It's not like big poetry with a P.
It's
It's
not
very,
like the Odyssey that's so
well, the
popular right
Odyssey is
now.
pretty easy to
Yes, yes.
read, but it's not like a lot of the poems you sometimes read in journals and nobody knows what they mean.
Okay.
So this is called Steps because it's kind of plain on the
On the
steps in AA,
AA.
the 12-step program.
Yes.
With an incomplete spinal cord injury, no one knew what my prognosis would be. I could be up and walking in no time or only recover bits of function. Rehab became a waiting game, buttressed by hope, by a higher power,
Mm.
tools and steps of the program, and my mom, who constantly quipped, "At least you aren't lying in the black hole of Calcutta." Once told the specialist hadn't a clue, I stopped asking them for my answers. Instead, I endured on inspiration from AA's little black book and slogans chanted, "Let go and let God. Turn your life over. Don't project, one day at a time." A Buddhist in training, occupying a bed in Burke Rehabilitation. My mom stopped drinking just in time to coach her daughter how to walk different steps through a life of unexpected hardness. I had no idea what the black hole was, but I would never slip into its darkness.
Oh, that is beautiful. And what a testament to your mom.
Oh, she was such a complex woman. I came home from rehab and we had this old colonial and I had to get on this stair glide. So I'm like transferring on this little teeny stair glide up this staircase. I curve into another wheelchair. Then I get into my bed. I'm exhausted. And I'm there for about 5 minutes. It's about dinner time. And mom goes, "Mary, come down and set the table." And I'm like, what is she talking about? I got siblings. I'm paralyzed. I'm not coming down and setting the table. She goes, "Yes, you are." And so that was a signal, right? You're going to do everything. It's going to take you
Wow.
time, but you're going to do it. And, so I'm still 15. I'm still a rebellious spirit. My parents, you wasn't push against them, but they were pushing right back.
And so did you go down and set the table?
Oh, yeah, of course. I had to.
You did.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was it. That's like my, go sit the table.
And
When everything's too hard, I'll
so
go
when
sit the table.
so when I'm just wondering, so when things got hard, she mirrored that you could. If you said you couldn't, she said you could. Was that her?
Yeah, oh, she would just do it. And one time, my van I was talking to you about before, the door wouldn't shut. So it broke. And I said, "Mom, you have to come down to the gas station with me. I gotta get this fixed." "Oh no, you do that yourself." I said, "I can't go down there. I can't, like, the door doesn't work. I'll be in there. Nobody will know." "Oh, you just roll the window down, beep your horn, yell, somebody will come by." You're a cute kid. People pay attention. And so I went into my room and I'm like furious at her. How could she be so cold and mean? And I was crying. And I was like, and then about 5 minutes later, I'm thinking, well, this isn't working. I better go get in that van and go down, get my van fixed, which I did. So,
So she encouraged you, and it sounds like there was a little bit of that kind of energy that comes to being upset with someone says, "Okay, I'm going to go do it,"
yes,
and you did it. So,
yeah, I'm going to
well,
go do that. Yeah.
yeah. So, when you're describing your how you were when you were just 15 after going through this extraordinary event. So, can you just kind of give us a little bit more information then. So then what happened? Here you've gone to Yale Law School, no easy feat, to accomplish a law degree and at one of the most reputable law schools in the country. So can you give us a little bit more about your journey and what you did? I mean, there might be people that are sitting there that maybe if something's just happened to them and they're listening to you right now. And
Yeah, it's
help
like,
us.
well, one thing when trauma happens or something happens, we always feel like we have to get better immediately or get through this right away or hurry it up. But you got to breathe and relax and no, it's okay. It's going to take time. And you didn't do this to yourself. Something happened, but it doesn't mean that it's always going to stay like that. That things, little things change. And I mean, that's not the only terrible thing that's happened to me. I've had many things happen to me in my life. I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. They took out my thyroid, a big scar from that. And I lost my voice. I couldn't speak because I was given radiation therapy. And somehow it paralyzed one of my vocal cords. So now I'm a paraplegic. I can't yell if something happens or I get hurt. And I'm like, oh, this is wonderful. I have a really good relationship with God because I joke with God a lot. Like, okay, that's really fun. Why are we doing this now? Like, didn't I get a hall pass from my first accident? Why do I? But
Kind of like ollie ollie oxen free. Okay, forget my number now.
But I think, you know, it's funny. Like the serenity prayer from AA is a very powerful prayer. It's like, God grant me this serenity to accept the things I cannot change.
Change.
That's like really important. There are things I can't change. I can't change that I got into that car. I can't change that I had that accident or I lost my voice, right? It's the things I cannot change. Courage to change the things I can,
Yeah.
right? So, okay, so I can change how I get through the world. I can try and change the world a little bit, and the wisdom to know the
The
difference.
difference.
So, what is the difference? So, I could fight and be mad and upset that I became a paraplegic, you know, but am I going to change that ever? No.
No.
But how I live as a paraplegic,
Yes.
that's different.
Yeah.
That's what I can change. And I have discovered that I can actually change the world's environment. So when I went to Yale Law School, it was not accessible. And the attitudes there were not what I would expect in one of the most liberal schools in the world. So I started a campaign to change that. And I wanted to share, it's a little longer poem, but it's what my professor had said in the class. And he wasn't realizing exactly what he was thinking. And I had to call him on it. So may I share this
Oh,
poem with
of
you?
course. I want to hear anything you want to share today, Mary. I'm just enjoying this so much in terms
Ah,
of hearing your story. And I just wanted to say one thing before you do that, though. I'm just really struck by how the 12-step program and your mom
oh,
affected your journey. And even when you just, express the words of the Serenity Prayer and how you've woven your experience in it, how important that is for anyone that has a challenge in their life. So I just want to thank you for the way that you've described that. It was really beautiful.
oh, there is a higher power,
Yes.
whatever you want to call it. If it could be your dog, for God's sake,
Yes.
anybody that gets you out of yourself.
Yes.
And we are held in love. We really are. And I know that today doesn't feel like that. There's a lot of negativity going on and a lot of forces that are saying everybody blah, blah, blah are terrible. But we're all human. We all need kindness and we should hold each other in love because that's the most powerful thing in the world.
It is the most powerful. And I just want to share too, my dad was a grateful member of AA.
Hmm.
And so when you're talking about your mom, I think that, here she was 3 years before your accident going into recovery and
Yeah.
not knowing that the seeds that were planted there were not only going to be so important for her, but how you, Mary, have gone forward in your life. And that to me is the higher power working through your mom and then through you to really the wider universe right now. So I just wanted to say thank you for that. That's lovely. Thank
Oh
you.
yeah, there's so many threads in life.
Yes.
There's always little helpers along the way. And I don't think things happen by accident, but even though I had a big one.
Yes. So go ahead.
So,
Let's hear the poem.
so this is called What Makes a Human Human. My classmates scribble down my law professor's words as if he's the second coming. Not me. I close my eyes, relax in my wheelchair, listen as he expands our minds to grasp. What makes a table a table? Is it the number of legs? What about a dog? What if the dog only has 3 legs? My body tenses as it senses where he's heading, eyes wide open when he asks, what makes the handicapped dog different than the real dog? His words slam into
I
my
actually
soul.
said that the real Doug. Oh my gosh. Okay, go ahead. Please keep going. Yes.
His words slam into my solar plexus, leaving me cold cocked, breathless, shocked. The scribbling scribes, don't stop, don't pause.
Good.
Don't see how these words diminish me. I can't hear outside of my head anymore. I don't know if anyone answers. The bell must have rung like it's rung at the end of every class. The students pack their packs, drift away, just like any other day, while I stay alone with my professor. I want to cry out, call him out, but my lips are shut, my lungs deflated. Familiar choruses rise inside my head. You are not worthy. You are not our equal. I remember my high school principal telling me it was impossible for me to return after my accident. And when I figured out how, I endured being stuffed into the stink of the cafeteria elevator, its decomposing slop attaching daily to my wheels. Living on college campus, I had to go home to take a shower because the bathrooms weren't designed with me in mind. Not one law dorm room is accessible. I live segregated across the street, regulated to backdoor entries barred from buses, boats, subways, automobiles, trains, airplanes, bathrooms, banks, bars, office buildings, restaurants, hospitals, doctors' offices, dentists. Every curb, every step, every design that doesn't acknowledge my humanity keeps trying to erase me. They all stem from a thoughtless thought. The hollow inside my body becomes the bowl of a bell, my professor's words that strike me, the mallet expounding, astounding wrongs that keep resounding until I crack. No matter the pain, the sheer weariness, my voice must be heard. I turn sorrow into a liberty song, swelling from my breath, rising from my depths,
Mm.
soaring past my lips. I ring out clear and strong. I am here. I am real. I belong. Yeah,
Oh, Mary, that is beautiful. And
thank you.
I just want the listeners to know that Mary had a big smile on her face when she finished that beautiful poem. So, can I ask you what happened with the professor? So, I love to hear the
Well, it was interesting because, of course, he was mortified. I said, Professor, I have to say something to you. You might not have realized that, but you just said that handicapped people aren't real. And he said, what? And I said, yeah, that's the analogy you were basically making. And everybody has written that down in their notebooks. You need to correct that. And he was very embarrassed, I think. And so the next day or the next class, he just said, I just want to say that I had made an analogy that was improper. He didn't call out what it was. He just really didn't address it the way I think he should have.
yeah.
But he knew I knew. And so I don't think he'll ever,
I
no.
imagine he would never use that and that analogy again, hopefully.
Well, I don't. We think a lot of things that we don't even think about. Like we say things, I'm sure I do too, that we don't think about. And no one's ever called us on it. No one's ever shown us a different way or said, that's shaping the way you're thinking. So if you think that handicapped people aren't real, then they don't deserve the same rights as
That's
humans.
right. So there's never going to be the ADA, the bill that gave so many really requirements for accommodations, and that's what's so scary about what they're proposing right now is
Yes.
not to enforce that, which means, and sadly, we know that even though it's the right thing to do, some people will not enforce it for all sorts of reasons,
But
and
it's still the law.
but it's still
And
the law.
but that then puts even more of a burden on somebody who has a disability because then you have to find a lawyer and fight it, and it's wrong.
Well, so I'm wondering if what are some of the important elements that you think that are really essential for us to know? If we're able-bodied, what do we need to know? What can we do to be to be an ally, to be someone who supports you and every person that for whatever reason might have a challenge where the American Disability Act made a huge difference in their life.
Well, one, I mean, you can become disabled at any moment.
Exactly. Well, and
So
when we get older, that happens in my age group, with greater frequency.
yeah, it can happen in an instant. It can happen to your friends. So, supporting a world that has universal design and access for everybody helps everyone else and it helps you. And when you go somewhere, you should look around and when you're having a meeting and notice who's missing from this group. Are there any people in wheelchairs? Are there any deaf people? Are there any blind people? Like, why aren't they here? Because 1 in 4 Americans have a disability. There are over 1 billion disabled people in the world. We're not like some small population. We're huge. So why are we invisible? Good question.
Well, so so what have you contemplated of why that happens? Why has that become a way that some people see the world?
Because of the lack of access. If you have stairs everywhere, if you don't have parking, if you don't have interpreters, then those people that need them can't access them.
And so those accommodations become essential for being able to do anything. And I'm wondering, did Yale ever change?
Oh yeah,
I
they
mean,
did.
did they, is
Oh
there,
yeah.
so, so there was a smile on Mary's face again. I imagine you must have been, did you stir the pot, Mary?
I stirred that
So
pot.
could you tell us what happened?
Oh, well, I went back. So we had a big event, and then that was the only other thing I did. But my students, people who got to know me, then started advocating for access. And when they went to the bursar's office, she used to say, "Is Mary going to the meeting? Do we have to have it accessible?" And then they used to start answering her, "Does it matter? Does it matter if Mary's going? Should be accessible." Right? That's a mind.
So then you had allies that it
And
wasn't
then we took,
the voices grew, right? It
oh
wasn't
yeah,
only your voice, it was many voices.
yeah. And I got all the student unions of different groups involved. And then we took, in the law school, which only had a very few places that were accessible, we took the little Ghostbuster symbol and put a wheelchair with an X through it, plastered it everywhere where there was no access because they just would have these little, wheelchair stickers and you think, oh, this place is accessible, but most of the school was not. And so we pointed out all the places that weren't accessible. And then the dean came up to me and said, "Mary, I see you've been a little busy." And I said, "Me? I can't get to any of those places. What are you talking about?" And I gave him a little smirk because I'm very mischievous too.
I'm getting that from you, Mary. So then what happened with the dean then after that?
Oh, well, I went back to the law school. He knew what I was doing. I went back to the law school for a reunion, and the front door was accessible. The elevators weren't those old ones, you open the heavy door and the
Yeah.
gates. They were regular elevators. The bathrooms weren't like I had one special bathroom like stuck away somewhere. There were stalls in the bathrooms that everybody used. it shifted.
And what
I
about
think
the
on
dormitory? I'm thinking about you having to go home to take the shower. Did they change the dorms too?
That was at Manhattanville College. I haven't really kept up with Manhattanville. I don't think they were, I don't know where they are now, but they still were like very slow in putting access into the place. That was a hard school, because I don't know, like some places did it really easily and some places didn't, but they should, you know. And if you think about the ADA, it was passed in 1990. So these are people that are complaining now. Why do I have to be accessible? It's so expensive. You've known this for over 35 years, you know.
Yeah,
Get with the
yeah, it just
program.
didn't happen yesterday. So
No, we
why
didn't
are you
spring this
complaining?
on you, you know. Yeah.
Well, um, so I'm wondering now, I've heard so many things now. Now I've heard that the principal said you weren't going to be able to graduate. And did you graduate from high school?
I did. So when he said I couldn't come back to school, and I'm a 15-year-old kid in a wheelchair, sitting at a table with all these people and my parents. And I said, I'm coming back here and you better figure it out. And I don't know where that came from. I must have had the force of the heavens with me because I just, I wasn't accepting that. I just wasn't. And my parents were amazing. My dad was an executive recruiter, which meant that we sometimes would go out to dinner with heads of major companies, like heads of GE and we would sit at the table with them and just talk to them. So I wasn't intimidated by authority at all.
Well, and it doesn't seem like you are. And then here you become a lawyer. But and Mary, we're going to take a short break. I'm so enjoying this conversation. I've gone over my half time right now, so we're going to take the break now, and we'll come back in just a few moments, and we'll continue this conversation.
Okay, Elaine, thanks.
The Trauma Resource Institute is a nonprofit organization cultivating trauma-informed and resiliency-focused individuals and communities worldwide. Our mission is to take people from despair to hope. We believe in a world where every child and adult has the capacity to recover from highly stressful and traumatic experiences. Check out iChill, our free app that helps you learn the wellness skills of the community and trauma resiliency models. Go to traumaresourceinstitute.com for more information.
Elaine Miller-Karras' book, Building Resiliency to Trauma, The Trauma and Community Resiliency Models, is available on Amazon.com. The book is about how to cultivate resiliency during and in the aftermath of traumatic experiences. The book also addresses body-based trauma interventions, combined with psychoeducation about the biology of trauma and resiliency. Elaine also offers personal consultations. For more information, you can contact her at elaine@resiliencywithin.com.
This is Resiliency Within with Elaine Miller-Karras. To reach the show, you may send an email to elaine@resiliencywithin.com. Now, back to this week's show.
Welcome back. I am here with Mary Keating. We are having a really lovely conversation. I want you all to go out and get her book called Recalibrating Gravity and read it because she has so much wisdom about many things. including, I think, her incredible journey and advocacy for people with disabilities. So, Mary, we have been talking about the different trajectories, people that said you couldn't when you said you could. Certainly having a family that was amazing, your mom and dad. So, what would you like to talk about next?
Oh, wow, that's there's so many things to
That's
talk
right. There's so
about.
many things. I told you this was your show. So go ahead.
You know, on a completely different track, I think a lot of people are nervous or don't think about dating somebody with a disability. And I think you're missing out on a quarter of the world because 1 in 4 people have a disability. I was fortunate enough to marry my husband, who's my soulmate, and I actually met him in 4th grade.
Oh, oh my gosh.
Yeah, but we
Everybody, this is
weren't,
like a sweet story. You met him in
yeah, but
fourth
it's an
grade.
interesting story. And we met and in 4th grade, and we were not dating at the time at all. And he is like the love of my life. He's gone through some very hard times himself. And we've been together and we just laugh through all the trauma we go through because without laughter you can't get through trauma.
Thank God for
Just
humor. Yes, I totally agree.
so if I could share another quick short
Yes, please
one.
do. Go ahead.
So this is kind of tongue. It's called A Brief History of Forever. So one, we meet in 4th grade at Osborne. You almost catch me in Boys Chase Girls and Girls Chase Boys. Two, I sit behind you in homeroom at Rye High because I'm a K and you're an H. In 9th grade, you move out of town, miss me being in an infamous car accident the next year. Three, at Manhattanville College, I discover you're in my freshman class,
Oh my
working
God.
behind the snack bar. You don't seem to mind me in a wheelchair. You whisk me away to an evening party in Manhattan, in Massachusetts, while you're manic. You could be my Prince Charming until I never want to see your movie star face again. Our date didn't go very well. That's not in the poem. Nine, sorry, four, 9 years later, fresh out of law school, I tell God I'm ready to get a husband. I bump into you browsing records at Caldors. You take me to the city, melt me by the kiss at the Met. Five, you keep punctuating. We're not boyfriend, girlfriend. Our bodies punctuate differently until you disappear with my fairy tale dreams. Six, I get it. You think you can't handle a forever disability. If I weren't permanently paralyzed, I'd walk away from it too. Let's not mention your diagnoses. Seven, in Albuquerque, Tom Petty sings to you, it's wake up time. My phone rings in White Plains, New York. You move across the US, overflowing my apartment, intertwining our lives. Eight, 5 years engaged, we elope and marry at Sweetheart Rock. While I'm getting beautified, you commit your vows to memory. Surprise me, as you do for a lifetime, with just how much you love me.
Gosh. Okay, you got me, Mary. I got tears in my eyes. All right, that was a good one.
Yeah,
Wow.
he's like the best. So, there's, what's fascinating? I met an Egyptian scholar and she's disabled. I think her name is Alexandra Morris. And she discovered in ancient Egypt, people with disabilities were part of society. They had jobs. They can find this in all the reliefs. Many of the pharaohs had disabilities. There's pictures or reliefs of pharaohs with, short legs, no legs, with, queens who are non-disabled. Um, they have door openers who have canes. So when did our view of disability change and say, not human, it is human? And so embrace it, everybody.
Well, I'm that's a curious that's a very interesting question. So have you looked at the historical I guess trajectory of here you have this experience, this history, and how did we get to looking at this in a different way?
I haven't looked at it yet because I just met her and
Uh-huh.
I haven't studied any of that. And I think
You-
somebody
That'd be,
should,
yes, would
because
be
it's
interesting.
like, why did we change? Why did we start thinking that people were less than when they had a physical ailment? Could it be that people were scared? Because, sometimes people are afraid of disabilities, like they're going to catch it, or it reminds you that you're human and you're fragile. We're all fragile. But that's life. And so we should help each other get through it.
Well,
Life's not
so
easy.
you've mentioned words helping each other. You've mentioned, it's really about love when you tell the story of your husband. I'd love to know what Tom Petty said in that song that changed his changed him, whatever that is, if that's your theme song or not. But I'm wondering because having spoken to many people that have been disabled and just in my own personal experiences with my own family, is that sometimes people say the darndest things to people
Oh,
who,
yeah. Yeah.
and so I'm just wondering, is there anything that you really believe is important? You've been sharing things with us already about, if we don't know what to say, what are there things that you've learned that you wished that there was like an etiquette book or something that would help us, be more of an ally?
Oh, yeah. Well, there's a great book that's written by Emily Ladot called Demystifying Disability. It's a fabulous book she wrote. She's a great advocate for disability rights, and she lays out practically every scenario you could think of. But the best one, first of all, don't touch somebody's wheelchair unless they ask you to, because our wheelchair is like part of our body. So just don't take my chair. Don't take my chair from me. Don't lean on my chair. Don't push me. Just don't come and say, "Oh, let me push you." If I say, "No, I don't want you to," you know, before you touch any part of me, ask me. And don't touch my chair or anybody's chair. That's, no. But even with any disability, just say, would you like some help or do you need some help? Because we always ask people, would you like some help? And if I say no, then okay. I say no, thank you. Or yeah, I really would like help. Actually, I'd like help doing my laundry, straightening up the house.
Rather than pushing my chair.
I got some briefs I got to get done. I got some clerical work I got to finish up, but no, but that's like one thing. And then speak to the person directly who has a disability. Because so many times I've been out and they'll turn to somebody who's with me and say, what will she have? What will she have?
As if you can't speak.
Right, as if I don't know how to speak. And I actually had an experience up at Yale. I went to Whiting Forensic Institute for the Criminally Insane, and I was one of the student advocates, and we're trying to get the people in a lesser restrictive environment. So I arrive with my class, and I'm in a wheelchair. And the administrator, who's not in the best physical condition, and I was in really great shape. I swam like every other day. And she comes up to me, and she points at me and says, she can't come on the wards. Just like that. I'm with all my classmates. She can't come on the wards. So I went up to her and I said, hi, I'm Mary Keating. I speak English fluently. So you can just discuss anything you have to say with me. She was,
Oh my gosh. So what was her response, Mary? Did
oh,
she
well, it was so, it ended up being a big thing, actually. Um, we all left because if I couldn't go on the wards, that wasn't fair. Then my classmates got a little bit disgruntled because they were saying this isn't a disability rights class. I'm like, yeah, I mean, huh. And then I had to meet with the head. My teacher was great. Steve Weisner was the professor, and we met with the head psychiatrist of Connecticut. And he said to me, first thing he said to me was, I don't know how to speak to people like you. I'm like, what does that mean?
Oh my.
Yeah, like, what do you mean you don't know how to speak to, like, I'm not an alien.
Yeah.
Like, is it because I'm so straightforward? I mean, what is it that's bothering you about me? And you're a psychiatrist, aren't you supposed to be able to speak to anybody? Anyway, we worked out that it was unsafe for me to go on the wards by myself. It was unsafe for everybody. So we went in pairs. But what's interesting is that while they were waiting for me to be able to go on the wards, they had me meet with my client who was a like a convicted rapist or somebody in a teeny room all by myself who could have just reached across and assaulted me,
It assaulted you.
right? If I'm on the wards, everybody was all around. It was much safer to be on the wards actually than to be alone. So just, there's so many things people think that are right and true, and they're not. So that's the other big thing is if you're going to do something for disabled people, consult them. We're the consumer, consult us.
Well,
for
even
that.
if someone were to say, I'm not certain, I mean, I don't know, let me just ask a question. It may be an awkward question. I said, well, Mary, I'm glad to meet you. I've never known someone that was paralyzed. Is there something that could you help me understand? Is there anything that I need to know about being present with you? Would that be weird to ask a
Yeah,
question
that
like
would be
that?
kind of strange. Like
Yeah.
when you meet somebody, you just, interact with them. Just, if I need something, I'll tell you I need something. I mean, like with anybody.
Well, it's kind of like because you can't walk does not mean you can't think and respond the way any human would respond. I guess that's what's kind of getting to the point
Yeah,
extra that
exactly.
I'm hearing you say that I think would be important for all of us to know.
Yeah, you just and don't and it's really rude to ask somebody what happened to you. Like do you ask anybody else what happened to you? What happens if I was shot by, my last boyfriend and it was traumatic? Don't. I have a really funny poem called How to Survive in a Wheelchair. If you want me to just
Oh, I would love for you to read it. Yes, of course.
as this kind of goes to what you're thinking. How to Survive in a Wheelchair. This is on my website too, if you want to read it. Smile until you don't care what everyone else thinks. Smile. It protects against pity. Watch for the smallest deviations in your path. If you fail to pay attention, they will pitch you out onto the ground to lie helpless for what seems like eternity until you get moving again. Opt for solid, sensible tires so sudden spikes in the road have no effect. Expect your personal space to be invaded, especially at airport security, where you will be legally molested. Prepare for your privacy to be invaded. Strangers feel entitled to ask you the most personal of questions. Make up a few fantastical stories about why you are in a wheelchair and practice saying them with a straight face. Don't worry about what you're wearing. Wheelchairs have a magical power to make you invisible, but be sure to cover your ass. Treasure those who treat you like everyone else instead of as an inspiration or an inconvenience. Get used to isolation, but keep trying to connect. The world is still learning the value of inclusive architecture. Just your presence in it creates change. Prepare to confuse. Ableists will think you have every disability and treat you like a child or speak loudly and ever so slowly to you if they address you at all. Just don't forget to smile. Best to be underestimated and keep the joke to yourself.
Thank you for that. Well, I think that brings me to the next question I have for you because of the title of the store that this show that was suggested by your team, and that was breaking stereotypes about disabled people, victims or heroes. Can you say a little bit more about that? Because I think that people do look at that, victims or heroes.
Well, yeah. If you look on Facebook now, because this is Disability Awareness Month, a lot of my friends are posting things to help. Uh, there's tons of videos now, which is great about Facebook. So one of them is when you're out on the street and someone goes, "Oh, that's so wonderful. You're so fantastic." And you're just like out shopping. You're like, for buying some yogurt, I'm fantastic. So
You're
that's
using your
like
humor again, right? I'm just buying yogurt. What's that about?
just getting yogurt, really?
Uh,
Or, so that kind of actually combines like the two things, like, oh, you're such a hero because you're out here. And also that that's like the biggest thing you could possibly be doing. Like maybe I'm fantastic because I just wrote a book and it hopefully will be a bestseller. Yeah, that's okay. But, just little things like that. And unfortunately, the world is designed where you really have to be like a hero to even get out the door. I plan before I leave, how am I going to get there? Is there going to be a ramp? Is there going to be a bathroom? Are there going to be elevators working? Can I park my car without someone parking next to me, and never park in those lines next to accessible spots, because that gives me access in into my van. People park across those lines. Even people with handicap permits do that. They park across the lines and they basically render the space unusable. I need all that space, if not even more, to get in and out of my van. And it has to do other people. So don't park ever there.
I
That's like
just want
my,
to emphasize that because my husband now has a disability, sticker, and we'll go places, and all the disability spots are taken. And
yeah.
every now and then you see someone that doesn't look disabled that's getting, you know,
Well,
but you don't
careful.
always know because
No,
they could have another disability.
there
But I
is
go,
no
oh
look
gosh,
disabled.
right. I mean, I will, and I guess for me, it's like the mobility part, which is so hard for him. But
Yeah.
I guess, you just caught me because I just said, oh, Elaine, how do you know that? And I caught myself, right? But so even though I may see someone that may, in my eye, say, oh, that person's really mobile where my husband's not, and this is really hard for him to even get out of the car.
Yeah.
So this, I guess that's what I'm saying.
I know. There's no, but there's so much, but there's so many people that have disabilities and a lot of skills now that you would love to hire them because they can plan anything, right? I mean, it's just, I mean, if I were going to start some major campaign, I would just hire a bunch of disabled people who have been successful in the world, because they must have skills to even get out the door.
Well, just what you're saying in terms of all the planning you have to do. So let me, we only have a couple of minutes left. So I want to give you the opportunity to say whatever you'd like to say to our audience about what we've been talking about, a lot of things. Your poetry is so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. So what would you like to say to the audience as we're leaving our time together today?
Well, first of all, if you want to contact me, I have a website. It's called marykeatingpoet.com. It's Keating. And there's a contact me. And it would be nice if you read my work and enjoyed it, and to read other people's work. This is Disability Awareness Month. And right now, I think a great book to read is Judy Heumann. She was one of the forefront runners of fighters for disability, and she recently died. She has a great book called On Being Human, and to read that and to learn about,
On being human, that's the name of the book, On
yeah,
Being
on
Human.
Heumann. That's her last name, Human. I think God has a sense of humor. He's like, sometimes I feel like we're in a Dickens world, right? Because everybody has last names that mean something for
Yeah.
them, right? Human. I haven't figured out what Katie means, but Mary, I'm pretty happy all the time. Um, and look around, like when you have an event or something, think about access. Like, can people get here? Because there's so many people that are very isolated and lonely and want to be part of
Oh,
the world, but they can't get there.
we can't get there. So
Mhm.
how do we really pay attention to making sure that
And then
the
just start.
venues that we have are accessible and have any excuse to, oh, it's just a pretty space. Well, then let's talk to the pretty space and see how they can make it accessible.
Well, yeah. And then think about this. If we all started speaking up and boycotting places, or telling them you need to fix this or no one's going to come here anymore, how fast they would change. And I was just listening to some quote, I forget who said it, but I think President Kennedy, that just do one thing can change the world, right? Start a whole river and an ocean and a tsunami. Just you have power. My dad always said power comes from below. And we have power to change the world by what we do every day.
Well, and I think about that little 15-year-old girl that wrote, or the 20-year-old girl that wrote the piece that ended up changing your city. And boy, that was talk about the beginnings of power for you, Mary. I mean, again, I'm so really I am inspired by your chutzpah, your energy, your advocacy. And I leave my show every time with saying these words. What else is true? many things happen to us in our life. And for our listeners to say, oh, goodness, my life is really maybe sucks right now. What else could be true about how you might be able to change the trajectory of your life? And I think that Mary's journey and her writings, her books, are letting us know that there's other ways of looking at the world with love and humor and chutzpah and advocacy. Like, as you say, that there's one person, that you're that pebble in the stream that can change the world. So remember what else is true. And until we meet again, I'd like to thank our listeners for coming in again and listening to Resiliency Within, and a deep bow to Mary Keating for coming and sharing your poetry and your humor and your wisdom.
Thank you so much for being here. And thank you, all the listeners out there. Go out and change that world.
Change and buy your book. What is it called again? One
It's
more
called
word.
Recalibrating Gravity.
Recalibrating Gravity. Get
I'm
Mary's
a
book as
scuba
well.
diver. I learned to scuba dive, so that's why.
Oh my gosh. See, there you go. That would be a whole interesting other subject to talk about, what it feels like to be in the water like that. How wonderful. All right. Until we meet again, this is Elaine Miller-Karras signing off for Resiliency Within.
Thank you so much for joining us this week for Resiliency Within. Please tune in again next time for another edition featuring your host, Elaine Miller-Karras. We'll talk again soon.